Join me today as I dive into the world of horror movies to highlight what I see as the top 10 final girls of horror film history. I bet some of these are going to surprise you. Welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, horror, and other nerdy things we enjoy. I'm Jim, the father of this show, with you today because Zach really isn't into the horror genre. That part of the channel is me. If you enjoy this episode, don't forget to give us a like, and we hope you subscribe. Got all sorts of content on this channel. Check us out. So, I'm talking today about Final Girls. The final girl is a well established trope of horror movies, really coming into their own back in the 1980s, and they've never left. Although there's a little bit from before. Approximately 80% of horror movies where there's one last lone survivor, it's a woman. The final girl thing is real. In fact, it's so prevalent. Horror fans understand there's even some rules, attributes that as you're watching a movie help you figure out who's likely to be the final girl. Let's take a look at those just as quick review. First of all, if you got a character who's clearly more pure than the others, abstains from sex, drugs, doesn't do that alcohol thing, clearly has a slightly higher moral standard than her peer group, yep, keep your eye on that person. The final girl type is also a little more responsible when others just want to blow things off. This is the one that's like, well, come on, guys, maybe we should do the right thing. This person is often a little less girly. There's some that are all into their looks and makeup and looking sexy, and the final girl type is the one that's not so leaning into that. Sometimes even a little more tomboyish and capable. Definitely a person who can take care of herself. The final girl type tends to be smart and resourceful, maybe even a little brainy. This is the person who's paying attention, notices her surroundings, and is best able to figure out how to use the surroundings, the resources, in a quick way to outwit or perhaps even overcome the killer. Final girl types typically don't want to be the leader against whatever's happening. They're not a fighter. They just end up by circumstances or because of the way other people act forced into the role. And once they are, they end up embracing it. Final girl types tend to see more carnage in these movies than any other character. Of course, that's not hard since they're the last one around and they see everybody else's demise. Finally, the final girl is often the one that the killer seems to have a fixation over, which drags the terror of the film out to the very end. This is the one the killer will not let go until ends up losing grasp, because final girl. Of note, the horror genre has changed with the times. It's gotten a little more modern, and some of these stereotypes have adjusted with the times. In particular, in more modern horror films, final girls often fight back pretty darn quick. They're not like, running for their lives and then finally fighting when cornered. No, now they completely turn the tables on the killer and they bring it. Final girls aren't so universally more virtuous than others anymore either. They're just regular people. Heck, some of the final girls are actually the baddest of the peer group. The one you'd figure would be a survivor in real life. She might try to help the others, but ends up almost like literally shaking her head at the stupid choices the others make when they don't listen to her, don't live up to her expectations, and thus don't live. She's like, well, what did they expect? So that's definitely a shift. My top 10 final girls comprise a nice blend of the old style and the newer ones that have come on the scene that I've really enjoyed. Overall, these are the ones that simply impressed me the most as a final girl. And as I list them, I will tell you why. But before I dive into the actual top 10, I've got two honorable mentions. Excellent final girls who don't quite fit the list. for particular reasons that I'll highlight. Let me reveal and explain because these are very worthy final girls, but they just don't fit with the typical top 10. So, honorable mention number one is Dana Polk. Now, Dana is the final girl from The Cabin in the Woods, a marvelous dark comedy horror film. She's actually one of two survivors in this meta horror scenario. She's played by actress Kristen Connolly, and this film came out in 2012. And it's one that I've actually bought because I really like this movie. Dana is a final girl in a movie that deconstructs the final girls trope. She's part of a meta experiment orchestrated by a secret organization manipulating horror tropes. For instance, the Virgin, being that perfect abstain from sex. Yeah, she's cast in the archetype of the Virgin, even though the film acknowledges she doesn't actually fit that mold. She's no virgin. It shows how forced and artificial horror roles can be. Also, in the end, Dana chooses not to survive. So she's the final girl, but literally sacrifices herself because she comes to recognize if she lives through this, it will perpetuate a system that sacrifices innocence to appease ancient gods. Spoilers, okay? If you haven't seen this, you're probably not watching this episode, but the moment when she refuses to kill her friend to save the world, yeah, it's a powerful rejection of horror convention. And then there's this thing where she flips the script on the genre. Her character, not final girl in so many ways. She represents self-awareness, autonomy, and defiance against the rules of horror. There's a lot of reasons this meta horror film hits well, and I really enjoy it. My other honorable mention is Clarice Starling from the amazing movie The Silence of the Lambs, where Clarice is an FBI trainee facing off with multiple serial killers. Jodie Foster played this role, an outstanding performance, and the film dropped in 1991. She is a final girl in a number of key ways, but there are differences to her compared to anyone else in my top 10. First of all, Clarice is not a traditional final girl in a slasher. She's an FBI trainee confronting psychological and emotional horrors, not just physical ones. And she shows outstanding psychological strength. She is outmatched in this movie by both the serial killers that she goes toe-to-toe with, but she is not shaken by that. She faces the monstrous Buffalo Bill and the disturbingly brilliant Hannibal Lecter. Oh my goodness, Sir Anthony Hopkins blows that out of the water. Despite being surrounded by men in the FBI agency who underestimate her and patronize her, she never backs down to these serial killers or her coworkers. She's amazing. She is a survivor. She is the final girl, but through intellect. She survives not through brute force, not by luck, but by staying composed, observant, and determined. Her weapon is her mind, not a final act of violence that saves her. I also will say, her impact as a final girl is cemented by the film's critical acclaim. It's one of the very few horror movies to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. I was hooting and hollering when this one won. I'm like, I never like the one that wins Best Picture. Practically never. But this one, yes! It was also a win for Jodie Foster. She won Best Actress. And that sealed Clarice's status as an icon of film and as a final girl of horror. But again, not typical, so another honorable mention. Those two have a special place in the history of horror movie final girls, but I can't truly rank them in my traditional top 10. I think that makes sense. Hopefully that made sense to you. But there were plenty of other more traditional final girls, and no one can really argue they are true final girls, for me to wrangle with and figure out which ones are the best. I don't think you'll all agree with my choices. This is my top 10. So come along with me, see which ones you like and which ones you are irritated at me and perhaps can't forgive me for leaving off the list. Number 10, Sarah Carter. This is the final girl from the movie The Descent, another movie I actually purchased because I really enjoy it. She's the lone survivor of a group of women spelunkers who go and get lost and trapped underground, only to discover they're not alone. Sarah Carter is played by Shauna McDonald, and this movie came out in 2005. While The Descent gets love, Sarah often doesn't get full credit as a top-tier final girl, but she's in my top 10. Sarah starts the film grieving a tragic loss, but when a caving expedition she goes on with a bunch of other women turns deadly, she transforms into a primal force of survival. Her arc from vulnerability to ferocity is one of the most visceral in modern history of horror. She's not just fighting monsters. I mean, she is fighting monsters, but she's confronting deep emotional trauma. She has to fight through that too. And then there's the ending. The ending of this movie is haunting. Now, that depends on which ending. There legitimately is two different endings to this movie. It's up to you to decide which one you like better. Number 9, Jess Bradford, the final girl from Black Christmas, where we're talking about a sorority girl who is targeted by a killer in the attic. This role was played by Olivia Hussey all the way back in 1974. This is one of the first true final girls. Jess is smart, assertive, and unapologetically independent. She survives a mysterious, unseen killer and never falls into the typical helpless victim mold. Nope, she is working this from day one. This was a very independent, strong spirit, ahead of its time in the genre. Some may say she is the original final girl. Number 8, Julie James from I Know What You Did Last Summer, where a teen is stalked after a hit-and-run cover-up. Last summer. This role was played by Jennifer Love Hewitt, and the movie first released in 1997. Not everybody's going to see this one as high as I do. This movie was a staple of 90s teen horror. Julie is defined by guilt, grief, and anxiety, but she fights through it, enduring the emotional and physical torment from a killer seeking revenge. Her iconic scream, "What are you waiting for?" is burned into horror culture. While Julie is not the most strategic fighter, her emotional core and determination make her memorable for the era. I'd say there's plenty of people that would not rate her as high as I do, but I really enjoyed the film. I loved the performance and I enjoyed the actress, and it all goes together to land her at number 8. Number 7 is Sally Hardesty. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the movie she's the final girl in, as she's the sole survivor of a cannibal family attack. She was played by Marilyn Burns all the way back in 1974. If you're keeping track of numbers, that's the same year as Black Christmas. Sally Hardesty is the OG traumatized survivor. Sally does not fight back with weapons in this movie. She runs, she screams, and eventually she escapes by pure survival instinct. That blood-soaked final shot of her laughing maniacally as she escapes in the truck with Leatherface in the background, it's legendary. Her sheer survival in the face of madness, torture, and Leatherface set a new standard for raw, visceral horror. Number 6 on my list is Nancy Thompson. Nancy is the final girl from A Nightmare on Elm Street. We're talking the original film where she's a teen hunted in her dreams by Freddy Krueger. She goes on to reprise this role in multiple films. This performance was played by Heather Langenkamp, and it first came out in 1984. Nancy is a dream warrior before that term was ever coined. She refuses to be helpless. She studies Freddy, learns about him, builds traps, ultimately confronts him with mental strength. She brings agency into a dream world where fear is the weapon. She turns the tables on Freddy Krueger, proving intelligence and preparation are deadly weapons. The end of that movie There's an interesting little twist. So some might go, wait, a final girl? Okay, there's more movies to prove she's a final girl. Number 5, Grace Ladomus from the movie Ready or Not. She's the final girl in a very different sort of horror movie where she is a new bride hunted by her in-laws. Samara Weaving plays this, and this delightful movie came out in 2019. It's the most recent addition to my list of top 10 final girls. Here we get a truly modern final girl with grit and attitude who fights back against her deranged new family who turn out to be a satanic cult. Grace turns from bewildered bride to blood-soaked badass in one night. With her wedding dress in tatters and a shotgun in hand, she survives this incredible experience and keeps her sense of humor at the same time. A modern final girl who earns every moment of survival. Delightful. Number 4, Erin Harson from the movie You're Next. This is another more modern take on the final girl, which I equally love, just like the movie we just talked about. Erin is a survivalist fending off masked home invaders. The role is played by Sharni Vinson, and the movie came out in 2011. Erin is not just a survivor, she's a hunter. Raised by a survivalist father, she reacts to home invasion with calm, deadly efficiency. Those invaders had no idea what they were getting themselves into, because she does not run from the killers. She eliminates them. Cold, strategic, frickin' awesome. And way up there, number 4. Number 3, Sidney Prescott. You had to know this was coming somewhere in here. Sidney is the final girl from the movie Scream, where she's a high school student targeted by masked killers. Little spoiler there. But you've got to know about Scream. This role was played by Neve Campbell, and the movie came out in 1996 and has spawned a whole series. Sidney is endlessly hunted but never broken. This character is the meta queen of horror. Sidney starts off as a vulnerable teen and evolves into a hardened, emotionally resilient fighter. Through trauma, betrayal, and multiple ghost-faced killers, she never gives up. She's smart, she's sarcastic, she is strong. She defines modern final girls. This movie was all about poking fun at the tropes of horror movies, and final girl was included, and we're going to redesign this sucker. We don't have Erin Harson or Grace Ladomus in these previous 2 movies without first having Scream. Sidney does, again, appear in multiple movies of the Scream franchise, and over that time evolves into a full-on warrior. Love it. Number 2, Ellen Ripley. This is the final girl from the movie Alien, where she's a warrant officer on a spaceship that's stalked by an alien. A really bad one. This role was played by Sigourney Weaver, pretty much launching her career. The movie came out in 1979. Ellen Ripley is a sci-fi / horror legend who survives not just one, but multiple encounters with the xenomorph. She's tactical and tough as nails. Ripley wasn't written as a female character, just as the best one for the job. So, cast as a woman, she becomes the original action horror heroine. She commands a spaceship, she protects her crew, and later, her daughter, and becomes the ultimate xenomorph slayer. Alien made her a final girl. Its sequel, Aliens, made her a legend. But that brings me to number 1, and you have to know who number 1 is. If you're at all interested in horror movies, you know who's coming. Laurie Strode. This is the final girl from Halloween, where she's a babysitter hunted by Michael Myers. Jamie Lee Curtis plays this excellent, perhaps original template of the final girl in 1978. Again, there were a couple movies on here that came out in 1974, but they were like proto-final girls. This is the blueprint of a final girl. Laurie is the babysitter next door, turned scream queen and survivor. She's pure, but smart. Frightened, but fearless when it counts. Her long-running battle with Michael Myers shows the lasting trauma of surviving horror and the strength it takes to keep surviving. Smart, resourceful, and fierce, Laurie set the standard for horror heroines and continued to advance the standard over multiple appearances throughout the Halloween franchise. Okay, those are my top 10. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you agree? Are there ones you think are missing from the list that you would have put? If you're going to give one like that, put it in the comments, but tell me who's out. Who would you not have included in the top 10? I'm open. I'd love to talk about the topic. So put your thoughts down in the comments and I will read and respond. Also, take a look at the show notes. There's other ways that you can get in touch with Zach and I. Our Discord server, there's an invitation link there. Our social media links, even our email. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your horror films. We'll talk to you next time.